All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you all for making it in today. My Monday recorded audience, my favorite, and it is a pleasure to have you all here. Kim is alongside.
Kim, how are you?
And so is Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
So if you have any questions, you can address either of them, as well as myself, as we have quite the show for you. Gary Dietrich joins us bottom of the hour, the iHeart Radio and CBS television political analyst. Brilliant take is what you can usually expect from Gary Dietrich, and this is both a time that's fraught with danger. It's also fraught with the kind of politics we haven't seen in America, wartime politics, in quite some time. There is talk of ground troops going into Iran, and I chuckle in the kind of grim chuckle in the shadow of the memory of Iraq and how ground troops were sent into an Iraqi situation that was not going to be easy to mop up. And I remember when Donald Rumsfeld, who was running the Department of Defense at the time, he said the troops will be there. I think he said they won't be there for more than 6 months, essentially is what he said. He said it in one of those Rumsfeldian ways. Mm-hmm. But there's always the promise that it'll be a small group, military advisors, a tactical mission. In the case of this Iranian situation, they'll go in to get the nuclear fissile material, get it out of the hands of the Iranians, whatever. They haven't said it yet, but that's where you're going to be headed. And, of course, the reality of that is that in order to send in a group of military in any mission, even if it's tactical, strategically laid out, surgical, whatever terminology you want to apply, you need all kinds of support from other military overlay, meaning you need air support to get in ground troops. You need other ground troops to support the SEAL team moving in. I'm saying SEAL team, whatever, the specialty force that you're moving in. My point is simply, you just don't go into Iran and extract the nuclear materials that you want out of their hands without a significant show of military force on the ground. Will that be a joint Israeli military, U.S. military move? Maybe, but that's immaterial. My point is simply the idea that you can go in with a small footprint is absurd. And I don't know what these guys are about, but planning is clearly not one of the things. I'll get back to that in a moment. I just wanted to, when I get talking about it, it just so outrages me and frustrates me. But I want to mention Sarah Kendzior is going to be on the show today. She's wonderful. She is a brilliant writer and a brilliant thinker, and she will join us at the top of the next hour. Mm-hmm. And Skye Perryman joins us today. Skye is the CEO of Democracy Forward. You know her from all the ways in which she's, through various litigation and through the legal levers still available in America, able to right the wrongs, many of which involve the corporate structure, the government bureaucratic structure, that is to say, most recently, the way in which the government has gone after law firms. Then you'll remember last week, the government reversed itself, said, you know what, we decided we're going to drop these cases against these law firms that wouldn't play ball. They wouldn't make that pro bono deal, that wouldn't really come to the table on a negotiation about the way those law firms worked. You'll remember the legal shakedown. There was a media shakedown, an educational shakedown, the academic stuff at the universities. That was all at the hands of the government. This is in the first month of the Trump administration. And then the law firms. I mean, it's a clear authoritarian playbook. Media, universities, education, right? And legal. So anyway, the law firms, a lot of them caved, but a few of them didn't. Anyway, Skye is involved in that litigation that's going forward. So the government last week said, hey, we thought better of it. We're going to kind of drop these things. And it looked as though the government had kind of come to their senses. Well, the Trump administration back on against the very law firms that they had set out to hunt down initially, then decided to back off, and now decided again that the hunt is on. So that's all happening with Skye in the second hour for those planning. And other people who plan, and if you plan, I offer that to you. I got some emails. Thank you, everybody who emails the show. It's helpful to me oftentimes. You guys see things that I haven't seen, or you have read stuff that I haven't read, or you've shared stuff that I have yet to share and that I will share.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
I'm trying to look now at the, I thought Lee Kopp sent me a note just this morning, Kim. It was in the early hours. I'm up very early.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Just a gripe of mine, he says, about news coverage of Trump on Air Force One. I believe that every time he is interviewed from Air Force One, his remarks should be subtitled, closed caption. He is hard to understand with the background sounds. It's true. He gets buried under the white noise. I thought what you were going to say is that you thought it was an odd look that Donald Trump wore the Trump merch, didn't he? To as he visited the fallen soldiers, the dignified transition of these four, wasn't that the this weekend he was wearing the white
hat.
Trump hat. Yeah. It was just an odd thing. I don't know. I mean, I'll put it this way. If Obama had done it, they would have, thrown him on the grill for it.
I think when you're paying respects, you take your hat off, right? Isn't that a guy thing?
They ask you to take the hat off at like a basketball game where they're playing the national anthem.
Right.
I mean, here you got fallen soldiers.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's a bad look, and in an increasingly kind of super. I mean, I run up against people all the time going, "Oh, Hillary Clinton wasn't wearing one of those, wasn't wearing a patriot pin, a flag pin, or whatever it was." Like I remember that during when Hillary was running against Donald Trump. Now, you've got him there. I'm sure it's windy. He doesn't want his hair blowing all over the place or whatever.
Yeah.
He's wearing the hat. I mean, otherwise, I don't understand it. I don't. But anyway, regardless, you can see the. Anyway.
And they know that it's not kosher to do this, and so it's my understanding that Fox News ran some other type of clip from him attending one of these transfers in years past where he wasn't wearing a hat, trying to kind of, I guess, sweep it under the rug, the whole hat flap, the hat incident.
It's true. I mean, it does speak to the way the propaganda machine of Fox News Channel is ready to cover for a guy they know just screwed up, right?
Yeah, and now they admit it. They're like, yeah, we did that. We did.
Yeah, so they literally ran file footage of him at another transfer where he's not wearing the hat. And then I mean, if that doesn't speak to, and that's an objective news organization, please, really. Anyway, after that, Trump took off and he was asked a bunch of questions related to the war, and I'll get into some of those in a moment. Again, I'm just looking at email here just to mop up from the weekend.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah, didn't I get an email from somebody who had was working a very strong credibility
Amy.
glasses game? Yeah.
I thought it was Amy that sent a picture. And she's got like her Mark merch, and she's got her Coachella Valley coffee stuff going on.
And we don't have that picture?
I think we do. I think we have it.
Okay.
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
Apparently, I guess.
Hold on, I have it.
Send it to everybody, and I don't.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Don't know why on the air. I just can't quite have things together. I do. I mean.
And I also want to know what happened to the pictures I was supposed to see this week.
Where is the picture of Amy working her credibility glasses game? Very strong. Very strong. And she's got, is that Clarity Blend? She's got Coachella Valley. I didn't see that the first time I saw the picture.
She has Zellman's and her Coachella Valley. She's got her credibility glasses. She's got her Mark Thompson Show shirt. And she's got her in the background. She's got her Clarity blend and her Zellman's.
I've never seen anything like it.
It's very impressive, and congratulations to
Amy. Is on fire.
Amy, that is the hat trick. And in honor of Amy, I'm going to put on a more powerful pair of credibility glasses for today's show.
So cute.
She's really cute. She's wearing the MTS T-shirt.
Yeah.
And she's rocking the full range of products. By the way, speaking of which, I almost slipped into a sugar coma last night from the Sweet 106 Bakery. Oh my God, they have a new product line coming out. It's a smaller version of the cupcakes, the layered cupcakes. Oh my God, it's so good. I couldn't stop eating it. It's a problem. Anyway, I want to.
I got a message from Courtney last night saying that she's sending me the new product. And by the way, there's some type of mocha flavor that incorporates Coachella Valley coffee into the cupcake cake.
We're having it. It's really crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. These are my new. I'm wearing them in honor of one of our great supporters, Amy, who sent us a picture, and. I'm wearing these heavier duty credibility glasses, which I need for wartime anyway. Amy's hat trick is much better than Trump's hat trick. Yes, it's very well said, Nullifidian. Yeah. All right. So I have a lot to get to, and then I've got Gary Dietrich. So let me get to first, sort of chronologically a bit, although I guess we are going to skip around a bit. After the whole business with the with fallen soldiers and with the hat snafu, the hat incident, Trump took to his plane, and that's where conversations about the war in Iran continue. There's so many parallels. I've been reading all this stuff. I mean, it's just, to me, it's a quagmire of the same sort, but worse. Anyway, let's get into some of it. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now to Air Force One and Donald Trump. And Trump, first of all, being asked about the hitting of an elementary school by what apparently is completely, and I'm looking at this is cut 14, Tony. This is completely corroborated by additional reporting. There's literally been video of Tomahawk missile hitting this elementary school. And this is in Iran. It was one of the first days of the war, I think day 2. And all of these elementary schoolgirls were killed. There have been efforts to suggest it was not an American missile. It was Iran. But it was a Tomahawk, and Tomahawks are U.S. missiles. We fired it. I'll give you another, frankly, chilling aspect of this in a moment, but here's what the president had to say about that.
It's a sad part of war. It's the bad part of war.
Mr. President, did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hickson? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done by Iran.
Can you give us an
Because
idea?
they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
Can you give us
You
an
know,
idea?
let me speak to this now on the accuracy. Clearly, then that's a fiction, right? That's a lie. I mean, now it's known that it was an American missile. The horror associated with that is substantial, right? But let me speak to what Trump said there at the end, which is the inaccuracy of the Iranian missiles. First of all, he has a worldview, as you know, that's sort of wedded to the 60s, or, you know, a sense that, you know, those people, they don't have any technology that is any good. And certainly they don't have anything that rivals the Americans and the Israelis. I shouldn't say anything, but I mean, I think the Israelis and Americans outpace them in terms of technological advancements. But more to the point, Tomahawks are brought in with tremendous care and coordinates that are quite precise. So what you no doubt have here is a screw-up. The Americans didn't mean to kill 175 elementary school girls at an elementary school. They had bad information. The coordinates were right, but for the wrong target. They have information that may have changed. In other words, those coordinates that might have at one point been associated with a military installation, they're no longer associated with a military installation. But, you know, somewhere along the chain of custody, that information never got in there. It's also very possible, and this is really what I wanted to mention because we have a top AI expert on tomorrow, that AI was involved in the firing and the designation of target associated with that Tomahawk strike. So you see in an instant the way in which technology, which we brag about, you know, how precise the American technology is. You heard the president in the last week talk about how we can send a missile out and it can go through a living room window and take somebody out watching TV. Well, that same precise technology was precisely targeted at this elementary school. Erroneously, I don't think, clearly the Americans wanted to fire on an elementary school, but what I'm suggesting is, very possibly with the addition of AI, there would be more and more of these kinds of things and these kinds of mistakes that we'd see. The CPAC head came out with a statement that the Iranian girls were better off dead than wearing burqas, says Randy. I didn't see that. That's pretty gross.
Yeah, I just saw that. It's the chairman of the American Conservative Union is now defending these airstrikes that killed these Iranian schoolgirls, saying that they would still be alive if the U.S. and Israel had not attacked Iran, but he argued they would be alive in a burqa.
Wow.
That's Matt Schlapp is his name.
That's some pretty cold stuff. The other thing I would draw your attention to, just from a strategic standpoint, and also this goes into the same category as the elementary school bombing, because this goes to civilian infrastructure. They targeted a desalination plant in Iran. Cut 15, please, Tony. And in this, you have a huge strategic decision they've made. and something that, again, can be, in now this category that I think is broadening, a war crime. So here you go.
Iran today accused the U.S. of hitting a desalination plant in Iran, and they said that might open the door to other strikes on infrastructure, non-military.
Allow us to also open the door to other strikes against them. Look,
Can you respond to that allegation? Did the U.S. hit a desalination?
They are among the most evil people ever on earth. They cut babies' heads off. They chop women in half. What they did, take a look at October 7th. Take a look at what they've done over the last 47 years. So I know nothing about a desalinization plant other than to say if they're complaining about a desalinization plant, we complain about the fact that they shouldn't be chopping babies' heads off, okay?
Mr. Wikoff, have you communicated to the Russians not to send targeting information and other assistance to the Iranians?
Strongly said that.
And do you believe that they are?
I hope they're not.
Do you see any evidence?
Yeah, I hope they're not. We'll talk more with Gary about this. But the desalination thing is a big deal because Iran's got a serious problem. And even if you were to, and I do not think we're going to be able to, somehow bring Iran to its knees and get this unconditional surrender that Trump is speaking of. I think he has some sort of World War II, Japanese surrender moment in his mind. You just won't get that. But the rebuild of Iran is going to be huge. And one of the reasons it'll be huge is because of the huge water issue they have. I mean, every country in the Middle East has a water problem, and these desalination plants are a big part of addressing that water problem. And so I would say that 90% of their water is used by agriculture, and this desalination technology is critical to bringing water to Iranians. And as you begin to take out, and then I'll get to Gary, but as you begin to take out these civilian infrastructure elements, you begin to hobble the country in ways that I think will be hard to put back together again, and also leave you with all kinds of attendant issues, refugee struggles. Many will flee Iran. I mean, it may look like Syria will look like a tea party compared to what's going to happen with Iran. You also have tremendous numbers of people who didn't like the ruling regime. And in other words, if you want to look at it in one perspective, they're on your side, or were. But if you bomb the hell out of their cities, which is what we're doing, bomb these oil depots and all the rest, you bring this fiery rain down on top of them, they are essentially going to close ranks with whatever regime can repel this American invasion. So those are just a few of the complexities, I think, working today, but I think it's worth visiting them, and then we'll talk more with Gary Dietrich about all of this. That building used to be a government building, but the maps weren't updated in 15 years. The people that update that information were all fired by Trump, says Wren. Oh, that's the building that houses the elementary school, or did house the elementary school. Thank you for the $10 super chat. So it's just as I was saying, the information is just, it's correct, but incorrect. In other words, it went where it's supposed to go, but they had the wrong information about what was there. The death of any children, no matter the cause, is sad and wrong, of course. Thank you, Doug, for $5 super chat. Yeah, it's particularly tragic, without question. Dude is hard to understand because he speaks in gibberish, talking about the comment about the Trump gaggle on the plane. And I don't speak Trumpish. Also, quote, dignified, anything and Trump is an oxymoron from a moron. I'm getting that you don't like the president, Luis. That was pretty strong, coming on right. I guarantee you Iran is making nuclear bombs as we speak, as they now have no other choice, says Wren. Well, that maybe Gary has a thought about that. I'll ask him. Finally worked out how to donate. Thank you, Glenn B. Well, that's important. Yeah. Expect more. Best wishes to you all from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Glenn B. covering things in the other hemisphere for us. Thank you for being here, everybody. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash the like button, do all the stuff you need to do on YouTube to help us out, share the show, all that kind of thing. He was wearing a baseball cap for the fallen soldiers. What a crass, classless moron. Where was he raised, says Joe. Well, he's, I think his general view is that he can do what he wants. I'm sure he didn't want to get his hair blown around or whatever, and that's why he was wearing it definitely, as you begin to see casualties from the war that you started, probably a good idea, not to wear the hat. But, I mean, again, so let's get to Gary. This is our former colleague from KGO Radio when we were but just a humble radio show in San Francisco. And he is the brilliant political analyst for iHeart Media, all across their radio stations and across their streaming universe, which is worldwide, and also across the CBS television stations. He's the political analyst there. How about it for Gary Dietrich?
Hello, Mark, and so good to know that the Mark Thompson Show empire has now fully expanded to the other side of the globe, down under. We welcome our Aussie friends.
Yes.
And,
we're worldwide, sir.
Yeah, I know. And the thing about it is, I'm seriously, man, your show's growing, and hats off to you, to your audience who are engaged. That's one thing. Can I just say this at the outset? I mean, politics aside to one sense, wherever people are on the spectrum, here's the general sense. I happen to have an occasion to run into yesterday the inimitable Willie Brown, who you will know, and many people around the country will know. We had about a 15-minute conversation at an event, actually over near the Bay Area, but the guy's 92 now, Mark, but we were talking about how, it's amazing how people are engaged right now. I mean, in politics writ large, there used to be a time, Mark, when people go, oh, yeah, Middle East, whatever. That's not the case anymore. Now, part of it's the advent of modern technology, but also I just commend people for being engaged in the issues and the events of the day. That's what a democracy is ultimately built on.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Sadly, I think social media and the control of social media and control of media generally by a few people changes the way information gets to those people that you talk about being engaged. So if three entities control all the information, then you really only are getting the perspectives that those three entities permit. So I both celebrate engagement, but I lament sort of the control of information increasingly. And also, just it falls into this world of extremism. It's another conversation we can have another time. But you can count on me to take your positive remark about things and turn it somehow negative. That's what I'm here for. Now, I want first to ask you about the stuff that maybe you'll feel in the end it doesn't really matter, and then I'll get to the draft, which is a big deal. When the president doesn't take his hat off at this incredibly solemn event, does that matter? And by the way, just speaking to what you were talking about, Fox News Channel covered it with the file footage where he did have his hat off from a different event. I mean, this is the kind of propaganda machine you have working on the Fox side. And then ultimately they tapped out and they showed the actual footage. But I wonder if you can speak to whether that matters or whether, I'm losing track of what moves the meter.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. I mean, certainly it is not, some would say, standard nor proper decorum. In solemn events, you don't see people wearing ball caps at funerals, right? And it typically, of course, as you all know, whether you're at a baseball game or a major ceremony in DC, you're not wearing a hat either. Certainly the gentlemen aren't. But does it move the needle in terms of people who, let's just, cut to the chase, like Trump or hate Trump? Probably not, right? Does it change their perspective on him? But it certainly isn't standard operating procedure, as my old Navy dad would have said.
So now to a broader issue. Ground troops in Iran. It's increasingly spoken of. The goals that the president has articulated, even broadly, even shifting as they do, seem to include maybe getting the nuclear material and materials out of Iran to sort of defang them from the standpoint of nuclear threat. That's going to take American troops on the ground. There's increasing talk about it, and go to cut 12, if you will. This is Maria Bartiromo asking the White House spokesperson about this.
Out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table.
So that's concerning, I would think, in the extreme. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, Mark, here, a couple of points on this. Number one, you're hearing no military analysts of repute, nor certainly anybody from our military talk about putting boots on the ground. I mean, that's just from a strategic point of view. That's not anywhere in the cards at this point. Politically speaking, I got to tell you, that would not fly. Not even in the, certainly not in the Democratic caucus in either House of Congress, but in the Republican either. I mean, you know, you'd have some hardcore people behind the president, yeah, but you're already hearing, especially, I think this is somewhat preemptive, Mark. You're hearing Republican senators in particular say, "Oh, that's just not even something we would consider in the Congress." So there's that. And then third, Mark, is the public perspective. You know that there's very mixed responses, primarily along partisan lines, but large numbers of Republican too, you know, have questions about this operation. When they start including the question about what do you think about putting American soldiers in there, I mean, those numbers are just going to absolutely plummet. And so, you know, heading into a midterm, just from a, you know, the raw political perspective, and this third point, I just think that's a non-starter.
Let me, as usual, push back then from the perspective of the fact that Donald Trump started an unpopular war, right? The war didn't poll well from the very start. He wasn't polling well when he began this thing that doesn't poll well. So the whole calculation as to what's politically viable and what's politically advantageous, I'd suggest, gets undercut by the White House plans to a large degree. So, again, with that significant, I'd say, preamble, I'd say for that reason, I see troops as a possibility because Trump doesn't care about the political impact. He's more goal-oriented than that. Is that reasonable as a pushback? Meaning, if you look at this president, don't you see that, you know, I don't need Congress anyway. Congress doesn't really seem relevant to my plans. I rule as a monarch, essentially, and I'll do what I want to do.
Well, certainly Trump's reactivity, you know, certainly balances out any strategic considerations. There's no question about that. I thought the important takeaway from Caroline Leavitt there was all options on the table. I see this really, and truly, Mark, I see this, and I think most people do, as more of an attempt at Trump keeping as many cards in his hand as he can for leverage. I think that's really the reality of it. You don't even hear, you know, you don't hear Bibi Netanyahu, you don't hear the Israelis talking about putting boots on the ground. The closest it comes is somehow enabling or arming or facilitating the Kurds, you know, who are somewhat amassed in Iraq across the border. And there's been talk about them coming into Iran to perhaps help facilitate a overthrow, a revolution, or whatever some might call it. But that's as close as you get to any real-time considerations about so-called war fighters inside Iran.
Yeah, and of course, the Kurds have pushed back a bit on that, say we really don't want any part of this. But nonetheless, you know, it's interesting just because you mentioned the Kurds. we kind of left them holding the bag in Syria. I mean, that they were really a great fighting force, to essentially fight for American goals in Syria. And then in the end, the Syrian pullout, this is under Trump in the first season of Trump, the first 4 years, we pulled out of Syria in a hurry, as I recall. So
one other caveat I would say there is, as you well know, Israelis, Americans, aren't quite as tuned to this, but there's a second war to this front happening in Lebanon for Israel, right? And that is quite vociferous. I mean, and you've got 100,000 Lebanese that have fled southern Lebanon because of this. So I suppose if you were to really say, is there a venue, a theater where there'd be more likely to be troops on the ground? It's probably at this point, in terms of Israel's point of view, southern Lebanon rather than Iran.
Yeah, interesting. I love that you mentioned that, because this speaks to the expansion of this war, and that was almost an immediate expansion into what has always been an area of military conflict between the Israelis and it's been Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, primarily. But I wonder if the Israelis won't now take additional territory and go beyond the south. I want to ask you about oil prices. Cut one, if you would, please, Tony. The world of energy is being rocked by this, and of course, this has a ripple effect with the world economic markets across the board.
Soaring. West Texas crude now hovering around $100 a barrel. You can see this chart over time. The last time it was this high was when Russia invaded Ukraine, and that height was at June of 2022. But I want you to look at the very end of this chart, an almost vertical increase over the last 2 weeks, an incredibly quick rise over a very short period of time. It could get even higher, experts say, by the end of March, maybe even $150 a barrel if travel through the Strait of Hormuz does not start flowing again. That flow of oil through that critical waterway has effectively ground to a halt. It's only a 20-mile stretch of sea between Iran and Oman, and actually only a 2-mile wide sea lane. The president shrugged off the rise in oil prices, calling it a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. CNN's Matt Egan is with us.
That's part of the story. There is, I suppose, Gary, I mean, if the Strait of Hormuz doesn't open, the world community will open it. I mean, the militaries of the world will go open that strait. It's not an optional kind of thing that we can make somehow kind of a workaround because of it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. And in fact, of course, we've heard Keir Starmer saying that they're sending 2 aircraft carrier groups from Great Britain's armada into the region. I think you're absolutely right. You put that perfectly. The world community is not going to allow the Straits of Hormuz to be closed for a year. That's just not going to happen. And for the reasons you point out. Now, it's interesting because just today yesterday was the big spike in the oil prices. Today there's been something of a drop, as the G7 has said they've convened to begin discussing ways to release from an international oil reserve and other tools. It's important for people that are old enough who remember back in the 70s when really, I mean, no pun intended, but America was clearly over the OPEC barrel. There's a lot more tools at the international community in the United States' disposal now for oil. And of course, oil production in the U.S. has really risen itself. So in the short term, we're going to see the spikes. I think most analysts believe it's unlikely to see a longer term. The question is, how long does this go? And as far as those Trump comments go that you referenced, Mark, and showed on the screen there, excuse me, there is a larger international political, truth perhaps in some people's minds to that. These other aspects are more important than a price of a gallon of gas. But the political reality, as you know, Mark, is I always tell people that's the biggest political neon billboard there is on every street corner in the United States. And if gas prices in California, there, as you know, Mark, getting back close to $5 a gallon, that's not going to be sustainable going into a midterm election.
It's interesting, too, just as an aside. I mean, we really don't get a lot of oil from that region. We are affected, though, by the world markets, because a lot of the oil we get comes from the world market. Even as I've talked chapter and verse on this show, people have heard me talk about the fact that's why the drill baby drill thing is such a weird. It's a weird way to go, because you're not getting that oil domestically. You may pump it domestically, but it's going out on the world market, and you're buying it back at a premium. So I want to ask you about the flex that is going on in this administration and those who are acolytes of this administration. Play me the Lindsey Graham cut. This is about Cuba, and I'm really, with the world ablaze as it is in Iran, I'm just wondering about, another theater or another plan. Give a listen.
I'm not looking for a fair fight. If we get in a fight, I want to win it. I want to win it quick. I'm in Miami. You see this hat? Free Cuba. Stay tuned. Yep. The liberation of Cuba is upon us. It's just a matter of time now. You see this hat? Make Iran great. President Trump said the only way to make Iran great is for the people to take over. We're marching through the world. We're cleaning out the bad guys. We're going to have relationships with new people that will make us prosperous and safe. I've never seen anybody like it. This is Ronald Reagan plus. Donald Trump is resetting the world in a way nobody could have dreamed of a year ago. He is the greatest commander-in-chief of all time. Our military is the best of all time. Iran is going down, and Cuba is next.
All right.
This is it's cartoonish to me almost, but speak to the realities, if you would.
Well, Lindsey Graham, for those who followed his career, could never be accused of being a dove. Let's put it that way. I mean, he is one of the more hawkish members of the Congress, is certainly the Senate. The interesting thing about this, Mark, in Cuba is really, it's the choke point that, as you know, came after Venezuelan oil was cut off from Cuba. I mean, Cuba's in a very vulnerable position. And over the weekend, there began to be very interesting conversations about linking all these things together in sort of trying to break an attempt at Chinese and Russian influence, of course, in the Western Hemisphere. People talked about that with Venezuela. They're now talking about that with Cuba. So linking all these things together is going to be the interesting point of this. Is there going to be anything militarily that happens in Cuba? We don't have any indication of that now. The closest that's come has been the notion of some sort of military, a naval blockade that would finally cut off the Cubans entirely from outside sources of oil, etc. But even that hasn't been put in place. We'll see where this goes. As you know, Marco Rubio, very strong voice in this area with a lot of direct connections in Florida to that. So we'll see where the whole Cuban thing goes. It's pretty nebulous at this point, but it's certainly on the radar screen.
I mean, you said it, though. The connections are real. I mean, he, is in the orbit of Trump. So I think he's a big yapper. But I also sometimes think in the yapping, you might be able to see and hear a bit of what Trump is thinking or being sold by others and now thinking.
Yeah, or Mark, or trying to drum up support inside Congress itself for a potential Cuban endeavor.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Let me ask you then, just as long as we're talking about the expansion and the flex, China has real designs on Taiwan. It would be insanely destabilizing. And we have a defense package in pact with Taiwan. I think it's $11 billion that was supposed to go there. And Trump has held up that disbursement of funds for Taiwan because he has a meeting with the Chinese coming up. And it seems as though he sort of wants that meeting not to be informed by any of the just the unpleasantness associated with the reminder that we're actually supporting the independence of Taiwan. Can you speak to the changing global relationships and how China might take advantage of this moment, and how close are they really to making a move on Taiwan?
Yeah, Mark, that is something that's been one of the undercurrents, as you know, of this for weeks now, going back to Venezuela, by the way. And interestingly, over the weekend, there were some observations from those who monitor these things carefully that a lot of the Chinese flyovers, flybys, sailbys, they basically in Taiwan, I mean, they're sort of, like buzzing around the Taiwan constantly. That is,
yeah, they're hazing them all the time, I always feel, yeah.
I mean, always incursions into airspace and all that. And there's been some interesting observations that stopped or significantly decreased in the last week or two. And, these are sort of old style international political moves. Before you'd have a summit, any kind of hostilities were sort of hush-hush. You mentioned that on the Trump side. We may be seeing that on the Chinese side. We'll see where that goes. But it was sort of like, hey, if the big guys are going to get together and have the handshake and talk turkey, let's tone everything down in advance. Maybe that's happening. We'll see where this goes. There were some people, though, as you know, Mark, who thought this was the immediate opening for China. If we're going to be involved as heavily as we are and send all our battle groups to the Mediterranean, the Chinese, perfect moment for them to, quote unquote, take Taiwan. There's absolutely no indication right now that is in the offing. We'll see.
It's worth noting, I think, I want to say 90% of the smart chips come out of Taiwan, something incredibly, 9 out of 10 of them. It's just, this would be a sea change. It would hobble the American economy and economies worldwide. Let me ask you about domestic politics real quick, because I've got you for just another minute or so. Give me a couple of big headlines from the domestic political scene.
Yeah. Well, interesting pair of polls that came out, one from NBC, one from Fox, that very much mirrored each other in terms of popularity of the parties. Now, this is going to surprise some of your folks, but both NBC and the Fox poll showed that the Democratic Party writ large is more unpopular than the Republican Party by about 7 or 8 points. Now, you flip that, though, to who do you want to see elected, the generic congressional poll that they do, and that flips. You have by about the same margin, more likely to vote for a Democrat this fall than a Republican. I'm saying this, Mark, because it's a very, very muddled picture still going into these midterms. I know a lot of people think, everybody's going to vote anti-Trump. Well, the polls just aren't bearing that out. So it's really kind of a standoff right now. I don't think you can say that there's real definitive domestic polling on where things are headed just 8 months from now.
That really speaks to the fact that people hate everybody associated with the system. It's frustration with the government. It's an indictment in a way of the American political system. I don't mean to sound seditious in any way, but I'm just saying. I mean, the people seem to vote no on the American political system right now, or at least those who inhabit it.
Yeah, and certainly, Mark, as you well know, inside both parties, to think that either party is fully unified going to this midterm would be a real mischaracterization. I mean, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is deeply dissatisfied with the leadership of the party, the direction of the party, and some of that's reflected in the polls. And there's not unanimity. Everybody thinks that, Trump's MAGA party controls the party. No, there's a significant portion, of sort of old school Republicans who are increasingly scratching their heads and have questions.
Yeah. Super interesting coalitions on both sides. Gary, so appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today. And we'll look forward to next week. All right, my friend. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Loving it. Loving it. Gary Dietrich is brought to us, of course, every week by Bill Campbell. If you are in or around Northern California, or you want to get in or around Northern California, you want a great real estate agent, Bill Campbell at RE/MAX Gold is your guy. You can call or text him, 530-448-7474. 530-448-7474. You want to get your house appraised, you want to all that stuff. He can do it. Bill Campbell, RE/MAX Gold.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, my friends. All right. I must tell you, I delighted last night, and I've delighted all weekend in the latest shipment from Sweet 106 Bakery. If you haven't yet, treat yourself, try it, and once you try it, you will be in. Sweet is spelled like a suite of rooms, S-U-I-T-E, Sweet 106 Bakery. And I am telling you, this may be the greatest taste experience as a dessert that I have ever had. Incredible. This layered cupcake, I'll call it technology, the idea of putting in these layered cupcakes in these containers, you see them on the screen now. It's unreal. So it's not just the frost, it's frosting and then just the right amount of cake and then another layer of frosting and just the right amount of cake and another layer of frosting. So we'll have a couple of spoonfuls. And just last night, I love that Christie's Southern Velvet, but the new flavor, which I think is coming out on Thursday, we'll tell. She's going to come in and talk about it, Christie. So we'll have a whole conversation about it. But all of these flavors can be spooned out. So you have a couple of spoonfuls, and then I put it in the fridge. After I've opened it, it comes fresh because they make it in small batches specifically for you after you order. And then when it arrives, you eat it, and then you put some of it in the fridge. Anyway, my point is, I went to the fridge last night. I have a little bit, put it down. I'm doing some reading, and then I go back to the fridge. And then I have a little bit more, and I go back and doing some reading. Then I go back to the fridge, and that's almost like I can't help it. It's really, really terrific.
It's there. It's calling your name. There is no bad bite. It is, as you say, may very well be the best dessert that exists, honestly.
So good.
Yeah.
So try it yourself. See if you don't agree. I know you will. Sweet106bakery.com. Use our discount code for 15% off. She's won Cupcake Wars twice. There she is. Female entrepreneur. I love her story. It's a great story of success. And you'll see why. Sweet106bakery.com. Discount code is Mark T for 15% off.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, I dread every week these days because of the news. It just gets grimmer and grimmer. But one of the bright spots on Mondays is a chance to speak with a brilliant thinker, investigative journalist, student of authoritarianism, and a predictor of so much. Sarah Kendzior's books are like... it's like reading The Perfect Soothsayer, talking about Epstein, talking about the elite, talking about the control of information. She's extraordinary, and we get her every Monday. It's a true gift. Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. I'm concerned, and I'm looking for maybe some perspective and framework. As we get deeper into this war and we get a propaganda machine that seems to sort of cover for this administration, a strong arming of the press. I'll play you a clip here in a second. I'm concerned that a government which has never historically told us the truth about any kind of armed conflict, about casualties, about progress, about how things are going, seems to have really bit off more than they can chew, in my judgment, and based on everything I read. I mean, just Iran is this massive country with, it's a far more problematic situation for this government than anything else that they've been involved with. And we, as the public, aren't getting information. Play me cut 7 from the White House press room and Caroline Leavitt being asked if, because of the president's reaction on the reporting of casualties, is it the position of the administration that somehow it's almost unpatriotic to report casualties? Go ahead.
Is going to attend the dignified transfer for these families. Given what Secretary Hegseth said this morning, is it the position of this administration that the press should not prominently cover the deaths of U.S. service members?
No, it's the position of this administration that the press in this room and the press across the country should accurately report on the success of Operation Epic Fury and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that has threatened the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice, they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have men and women in our armed forces who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room and for every American across the country and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these...
Secretary Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the Secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the Secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not We've never had a Secretary of Defense who cares more.
Drones get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad.
Yeah,
As you know, we cover the deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact. Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. You also had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Kane, who's a brave patriot, standing alongside the secretary at the Pentagon this morning, again expressing his condolences to these families. And I just told you that the President of the United States will be attending their dignified transfer. So please,
that's not making the president look bad. That's showcasing that.
And we expect you to cover that as you should. We expect you to cover that as you should, Caitlin. But you and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make the president look bad. That is an objectable fact.
I don't think covering troop deaths is trying to make.
If you're trying to argue right now that CNN's overwhelming coverage is not negative of President Donald Trump, I think the American people would tend to agree.
Yeah, she is like again. It's like a cartoon character almost. I mean, it really is. It would be laughable were it not so grim. Speak to me about the information flow out of this administration and generally out of these authoritarian regimes.
I mean, like any authoritarian regime, I don't pay serious attention to anything it's saying in terms of how to ascertain information about what's going on. It's theatrics. I think the only thing that's different in the second term, with Trump than the first is that the media itself is much smaller, much more dissipated over multiple networks. The media that replaced the mainstream media, things like TikTok or podcasts or so forth, have been bought up by friends of Trump. There are oligarchs controlling algorithms. So the role of somebody like a press secretary really isn't that important. The control of the media itself and the gutting of local and national at this point media is more important. And in this case, it's really revolting because there have been a lot of big kind of major things that have happened this year, but I think the Iran war trumps all of them, and we need to know about things like American casualties, like whether there's going to be troops on the ground, like whether they're going to reinstitute a draft, and we don't have any reliable way of getting that information.
Tony, do we have Trump talking about the draft, or he says he can't rule it out? And it just was odd to me. I thought he'd push back harder on that, particularly since he doesn't care about going back on something that he says, but the draft is very much in the conversation now, and ground troops are very much in the conversation. And it seems to me, Sarah, that to meet the goals, even though the goals are shifting all the time, but the goals is sort of vaguely articulated, like we want to get the nuclear fissile material or whatever out of the Iranian hands, and we want to install or see to it that there's a government there that reflects the people. We want unconditional surrender. All these things will require some kind of American military troops on the ground to make happen.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a much bigger problem with that, because this is the first time, I think, in American history where there are very few Americans alive that can remember us winning a war. The World War II generation has mostly passed on. And, kids today, if you're like 18 years old today, your grandparents will tell you about how we lost Vietnam in a quagmire. And your parents will tell you about we lost Iraq and Afghanistan in a quagmire, and how we have lived, for multiple generations with these quagmire wars that are broadly unpopular. They are unpopular with every single political group. They are unpopular with every single generation. And I think, this younger generation, it doesn't matter what's been done to our educational system or our media. They will hear immediately from their family members, from their friends. I think everybody knows, a veteran or somebody, a wife of a veteran who fought in one of these horrible wars, and the pain that it caused. So I think this is the kind of firsthand knowledge that not even an autocratic regime can control. And I can't really imagine kids, young people between like 18 and 25 being real hot on fighting a war for Donald Trump and Netanyahu, fighting a war largely in the interest of Israel and not in the interest of the United States, and just fighting a war, period. Fighting a war where they don't know why they're there. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know who's going to keep them safe. They don't know whether they're going to be protected. It's a really frightening position to be in. And that's why I think they might resort to trying to institute a draft. In this case, I do think Americans will fight them back on this. I think that this will, rival and surpass what happened during Vietnam if they try to do that, because people don't want this and they don't want it so badly.
Yeah, that's where the information stuff that you're talking about actually very much informs the pushback. There's just so many more places where people are learning some of the specifics. There isn't sort of institutional media the way there was during Vietnam. You had like 3 networks and that's all you got. But even then there was pushback, of course, and I'm interested because of the conflicts that you mentioned. It was Vietnam that had a draft. The others didn't have a draft. We got out of the draft, and then you're just sending, largely minorities, and you're sending those who need the money, essentially, those who are socioeconomically challenged. And to be fair, there are many who are in the culture of the military. The family's been in the military for a long time. I don't want to say it's exclusively those who fall into certain economic categories. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it becomes then a war being sort of an optional thing for families, whereas Vietnam was a shared hurt in large measure, even though there were many, obviously, who, if you could be connected enough and have the right money or socioeconomic situation, academic situation, et cetera, you could skirt the war. I guess what I'm trying to say here is a return to the draft really returns you to a time that was viewed sort of as distant history from the standpoint of obligation on the part of Americans.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a return to something that Americans rejected. This would be something that the baby boomers, it would hit them hard in the heart, remembering that time. And, I think one key difference is that, for my generation, for late Gen X, young millennials and so forth, we're the generation that went to fight in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Like, I was 22 when 9/11 happened, and I knew a lot of people in my age group, who signed up genuinely thinking this was their patriotic duty, genuinely thinking they were going to volunteer and defend America. And these are recent college graduates. It wasn't, it was a predominantly, lower class recruit pile, especially as time went on. But there was this little flurry of activity where people thought, we have been attacked, we have to rise up in defense. And then they saw the exploitation of that as the Afghanistan war turned into an Iraq war, fought for a lie. And so, my generation remembers that very vividly. And I think that, that's one of the reasons, like, we've been talking about other, older generations remember it vividly too. We've been talking about it for so long. But yeah, I do worry they're going to prey on people who are poorer, as they always do. I'm also very worried, and I'll stress this is just a theory I have. It is not based on evidence, but I just kind of, know the way these guys think. I'm worried they're going to exploit the student debt crisis. I could easily see them, and please don't get inspired if you haven't thought of this. I could easily see them saying, if you have student debt, if you have other kinds of debt as a young person, you are now obligated to work off that debt through military action, and kind of use that. It's just the kind of thing that they would come up with. And I'm hoping that it doesn't go this way, but it does make me very nervous because, the economy has cratered so badly in the last 5 years. People are really racking up huge expenses. There are fewer opportunities for scholarships, fellowships for young people trying to get an education. That's another major motivator of, joining the military, is trying to pay off that college tuition and so forth. So yeah, it's a really frightening situation potentially for young people.
Play me that cut of Caroline Leavitt when she was confronted on actually Fox News just this weekend about the draft situation. Will you, Tony? She was asked about this, because now, as you said, people hear draft and they really panic. I mean, this is a moment of inflection in a concert of moments of inflection that we've seen. Here you go. Here's what she had to say.
Draft that they're going to start out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be. And President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table.
Yeah. So, again, I would have just said, no, there won't be a draft. We have no, I mean, in an administration that doesn't feel any particular allegiance to the truth, and they change their story all the time, why not just bat it down? It's really, it was odd to me. Again, I don't have great faith in what they say. I'm with you, but it is interesting that they don't go for the flat out rejection of the notion of a draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, a way for them to test it among their core audience. I believe that was Fox News they were showing, and I think they're trying to see how that base reacts, because there have been big shifts in that base. There's the majority of evangelical voters disapprove of Trump now. A much larger number of Republican voters disapproves of Trump. They don't care really about public approval in the sense of, will we win the election, or do they like me, or have I won hearts and minds? I think they are trying to plan for who will participate in civic unrest, because what their ideal situation is something where people come out who they really want to shoot and lock up anyway, which is younger people, immigrants, anybody who's not white, anybody who they have defined already as an enemy of the state, people from the left, the Democratic Party, whatever. The thing is, though, is something like the draft is going to be so universally loathed because of that deep fear, of sending your loved ones off, of sending young people, young Americans off to war for what? Our lives are not benefiting in any way. We're certainly not safer. We're far less safe. This is a situation also that, unlike other wars, we've been gripping ourselves for 47 years, just in the same way people like Netanyahu or John Bolton or Elliot Abrams, all these older folks have just been, gripping themselves in anticipation. Like I've been, feeling dread since I was about 5 years old and I first heard about the potential of this war. It's ridiculous. And so, of course, we heard about it more, during the Iraq war. We've heard many leaders, raise it. It's always, Iran is going to imminently strike us for 47 freaking years. How much more imminent are we going to get? And that's the thing also, is that unlike after 9/11, when people were shocked and they were they sprung into action, if there is a terror attack now and the Trump administration, infamous for its lies and propaganda, will claim that Iran did it, a substantial amount of this country is not going to believe them. And this is, not just because of Trump, but because we went to Iraq based on a lie. We went to Vietnam based in large part on lies. And so, the instinct, the sensible instinct of the American people is to say, they're lying. They're at least covering things up. They're at least being selective about the truth. This doesn't mean Iran is our friend, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily did something. And I think that skepticism on top of everything else, will be enough to drive rage. One final thing, unlike, this is important because unlike any other president, most presidents would be upset at the prospect of, say, their entire country collapsing, like economically, socially, in terms of stability, at something like a, mass protests against a war that is raising prices, that is endangering us, et cetera, all these terrible things. Trump loves everything about this. He has said publicly that he wants the economy to crash, that he wants riots to ensue, and he is working primarily for foreign countries and for transnational organized crime. That is who he actually serves. He is a wartime president, and the war is on us. The war is on Americans, on behalf of some of the worst people in the world elsewhere. And so that's different because the point of leverage changes in terms of how Americans can fight back. It's very different than it was, say, under other terrible presidents like George W. Bush and so forth.
So when you say that Trump has said publicly that he wants the economy to, et cetera, can you just Can you run that out for a second?
Yeah, in February 2014, he went on Fox News, and and he did this long interview. This is during the Winter Olympics, and he was defending Putin. Actually, that's the main reason he went on there. But then he starts talking about what a failure Obama was, and then he says, what will really make America great again when the economy collapses, when there's riots everywhere, when everything comes crashing down. That's when we'll be great again. And he also said in the same interview that he and Putin had made an arrangement. There's going to be a big win in the future. Everyone's going to like this. He was not running for president at this time. I found this interview clip. It was obscure before I found it in a Russian language online publication because Russian state media was so excited by all of these declarations from Trump, both the praise of Putin, but also the prospect of America collapsing. And so when he was running for office in 2016, early on, I kept that clip was still up online then on Fox News. I kept, kind of playing this clip and being like, hey, maybe we should be a little bit concerned about this. And, the mainstream media went nuts attacking me, not Trump, me, for daring to, draw attention to this, to take it seriously. It's in my books. It's in Hiding in Plain Sight. Transcript of it. I think parts of it are in They Knew and in other works I write, because I really felt like it was Trump being very honest about his plans. And he was honest at a time where no one expected he would have the ability to ever fulfill them, because he was the host of Celebrity Apprentice. He wasn't the commander in chief. Like, why would we need to worry about what Donald Trump thinks about anything? That was generally the consensus. But even the Fox News guys were kind of like, that's a really weird thing to say. They weren't really too keen on that one. So
yeah, well, and it's interesting. You can sort of see at the time the way the kind of blithering of Trump falls into the category of just crap he says, when the reality is that it kind of gives away the game if you look at it.
Oh, he often says things that are true, especially when it's about his enemies, like who, he pretends. It's like these sort of frenemies he has, like the media. He'll say, oh, you need me, you love making money off me, or you're all scared of me. All these things that are just true, where he describes how he'll exploit a system. He'll confess to crimes. He'll be like, yeah, I did obstruction of justice a couple of times. Yeah, they deserved that riot I did on January. It's like, whatever. Like, he'll just say it, because if he feels confident that there's not going to be any repercussions, it's a way of flaunting power and making people feel demoralized, confused, wondering why their representatives do nothing, wondering where did the FBI go? This guy's like committing crimes on TV, confessing them on TV, live streaming them and announcing them in advance. I mean, it's really, it's not hard to solve here. Kind of just need a library card and an internet connection, but somehow, the FBI, which notably had protected many of Trump's mafia backers, didn't go after Trump and his cohort either until he was installed in power. So there's that.
I know you're always so funny when you say, all I did was find stuff that's out there. It's not like when people talk about, oh my God, you're such this wonderful, even I do it. I just say, it's like you can see into the future. Your view is no.
I can see into the past. It's like I could do internet searches back when they worked, like back before they were taken over by AI, like vomiting up, nonsense summaries of things that happened. There was a time where you could just find things in the public domain that were incredibly damning. Or, one of your other guests, David K. Johnston, like he had multiple books about Trump committing crimes. So I read David's books, and I read Wayne Barrett's books, and I read the books of other people who covered Trump, like when I was about, 7 years old. And guess what? They all held up really well. And I kept thinking, what the hell is wrong with everybody? Like, we know all this already. Why is there this collective experience of the media lying and playing him down across the board? And I mean, that I still find that somewhat puzzling. In some cases, it's direct. These are journalists who have a long-term personal relationship with Trump, friendships, family relationships, so on and so forth. But it was, I was an outlier at the time. Now I'm very mainstream, very conventional wisdom. But you don't want to be conventional wisdom about my president is a international mafioso who wants to end the world. Like, that's not the kind of opinion that you want to be, like on top of. You really want to stay on the fringes for that one. And unfortunately, Trump pulled the fringes to the center, and in doing so pulled me. And that sucks. I'll just say it. I mean, this is not what I wanted. I did not want to be right about all this, but history doesn't lie. the facts of the past don't lie, and you can use them to predict the present. So that is why they're trying to destroy those facts. So,
That, I mean, the plot is just clearer and clearer. And, you write a lot about Russia and the connection of Russian oligarchy to American oligarchy, et cetera, and worldwide oligarchy. Play me, if you would, cut 5, Tony, when Hegseth is talked to about and asked about the Russian connection in the Iran conflict and where Trump might. When I watch him, Sarah, just as an aside, then I want to hear what you have to say. I see why he was only the weekend host on Fox News, because he's just paper thin and inauthentic, and it's extraordinary to watch him. But go ahead, speak to what he was saying.
Well, first of all, I don't think Russia is the leading country factoring in this war. Like I wrote a long article recently. Like, this is Israel's war, and in particular Netanyahu and the Kahanists, the Arista Meir Kahane and his extremism in the Israeli government, fulfilling an ambition that Netanyahu openly admits he's had for 40 years. He's described the invasion of Iran as his 40-year dream. He thanked Trump and the United States for making it come true. As for Russia, they have been involved in a number of illicit deals with Trump, with people attached to Trump, including international oligarchs and mafiosos, but also people in the American administration. I think the deal that was struck back in 2015, 2016 was that we would back off of them invading Ukraine, and then in exchange they will back off of us, by which I mean the United States working with Israel to invade Iran, which historically has been a Russian partner. That has largely borne out, even under the Biden administration, where rhetorically they were defending Ukraine quite a lot. But the war has gone on and on with this massive casualty count. And of course, Trump then switches and just is openly on Russia's side. He has had a long relationship with the Russian mafia. They basically used Trump Tower as a dormitory going all the way back to the 1980s. A lot of these Russian mafiosos and oligarchs, though, are deeply connected to Israel. Israel is the country they flee to when they get sanctioned by somebody. They just go and set up shop over there. So these are people who don't have a particular kind of national loyalty. They don't care about nation states. They care about money and power. And, in Putin's case, they care about territory. I'm not sure that these mafiosos behind the scenes really care at all about that. They don't care whose country is destroyed, as long as they can take the resources from it, as long as they can profit off of it. And so, Russia is something to watch, but it's really the overlapping nature of all these transnational criminal networks posing as governments working together for an apocalyptic aim. And it's very frightening to see that aim finally reach fruition now.
Help connect a couple of dots. Someone wrote to me this week and asked me to ask you about the notion that, and here are the dots, Kash Patel got rid of a unit in the FBI dedicated to looking at the Iranian connection to domestic terror and domestic terrorists in this country. We then go to a war in Iran that it's suggested and openly been talked about even by the administration might spawn some kind of reaction in this country. We saw the situation in Austin. Guy was wearing a T-shirt. I don't think he was necessarily connected to the Iranians in any way. I mean, funded by the Iranians or whatever, but maybe animated by the entire thing. In any case, the question that I was asked by a viewer to ask you is the Kash Patel firing of the FBI unit that's dedicated to rooting out that Iranian terrorism in this country, and the idea somehow that there might be more of these incidents connected to stochastic terrorism of some sort or state-sponsored terrorism by Iran in this country, part of a Trump plan, this is the key part, to create issues domestically with terrorism to the point that he can call off the elections, delay the elections, invoke some kind of other emergency order such that he can take to the streets in other ways or affect American culture that dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, I think he may plan to do that. I think if there's a terror attack, this would be a great opportunity for martial law, which is something they've talked about before. It's interesting that Kash Patel's firing of all of these experts of Iranian terror is open. It's something that they're telling us, I guess, to pre-scapegoat Kash Patel. And I mean, honestly, if I were Kash Patel, this is the time where I would try to preserve my own dignity because, say there's a terror attack, guess who everyone's going to want to go and kill? Kash Patel. So really, it's a fine opportunity to, let America know, since we don't have national security anymore anyway, all of the secrets of what Trump would like the FBI to do. On the other hand, it does bring to mind, one of the first things Trump did in his first term regarding the FBI was fire all the Russian mafia experts. There were a bunch of people in there who are studying the exact network that Trump was linked to. He got rid of them very quickly, smeared a lot of their reputations. So in some sense, he just gets rid of people who have expertise, fearing that they may speak out and use that expertise. Nobody really did that in a meaningful way. They just, wrote books or had podcasts and kind of cashed in on the whole thing. Maybe it's the name, I don't know, Kash Patel. But we'll see. That's why he was hired. We'll see what he does. But yeah, I mean, there's this stigma to be talking about, say, quote, false flag, where everyone thinks you're Alex Jones or something. If you bring up the idea that the, notoriously lying, bloodthirsty, war president might, attack his own people as he already is through ICE and other means, it's not a wild and crazy idea. It's not a crazy idea that someone like Trump and his administration would do something like that and then blame it on Iran because they need to have, some kind of pretext for this war. They did this war in a very strange way. They didn't have the big 9/11 moment and then say, hey, now we're going in. It was just the sort of, they're imminently attacking us for the 47th year in a row. So, better get to it and make oil rain from the sky. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's horrible to witness. It's horrible, to watch that civilian casualty count rise in Iran. Everything about this is very bad.
Well, the raining of the oil from the sky, as you suggest, we've seen the images. It's raining down on people who actually are sympathetic to removing the regime that's been so oppressive for so long. I mean, you're hurting the very people who are kind of, if you will, on your side from the standpoint of regime replacement. But I mean, you bomb them into extinction, and they're, I'm sure their view is, America bad. I mean, who could possibly dispute that?
Yeah, I mean, we are bad in this case. It's like, there are many governments in the world where this is the case. This is why I've always cautioned people, to make a distinction between an authoritarian leader and the people under them, and don't just assume that people approve of them. That also applies to us, as Americans. Like, we do not approve of Trump. We do not approve of this war, especially in terms of the war. Not, disapproval is very wide across the board. But I mean, no one deserves to have oil raining from the sky on their head caused by a foreign force invading their city. No one deserves to have a elementary school or a children's center bombed and see corpses of children in the street. Sorry, it's like I can't even talk about it because I get very upset. Absolutely no one deserves this, no matter what their political views are. There's no excuse for massacring children, which is what we are doing. And, this is a revolting premise. It serves nothing. It only serves the bloodlust of, some of the worst people alive, extremely dangerous people who should have been reined in and removed from power, removed from access to military technology long ago.
Yeah. So well said, and it's where we are. And of course, the administration is not taking responsibility for the bombing of the elementary school, even though the reporting all corroborates the initial reporting, which was that it was an American missile, Tomahawk missile. I mean, that's an American missile, and the idea that they can continue to stonewall, they are still stonewalling it. And it happened on was it the first day or the end of the first day? I mean, it was just it's like one of the first things that happens is this humanitarian horror show, and it's sadly a preview of what is ongoing. It seems as though there was a celebration initially, a lot in the Iranian community in Los Angeles, for example, which is the biggest Iranian community outside of Tehran. really celebrating the replacement of the regime or the fall of the regime. And you saw this worldwide. I was watching on Instagram, and I know many Iranian people around the world, and I see on their feeds. But as you say, it's kind of be careful. It's not over. It's really just beginning.
Well, and also, the regime has not fallen. Like the 86-year-old Ayatollah is no more. His son is the new Ayatollah and is, from what I have read, more extreme, more radical, more oppressive than his father, who was an elderly man. And so, what they might have done is oust an older ruler and replace them with an even worse one. Life is certainly no better than the people of Iran when they were being, oppressed and in terms of protesters, massacred by their own government. Now they have, 3 governments going against them. I mean, there's nothing, to celebrate here. I get that people were hopeful. That certainly makes sense, especially for people who had to flee as a result of this. Of course they want to be able to return to live in freedom. That's normal, that's expected. But Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are not going to be the people who make that happen. That is not their intent at all. Their intent is, regional conquest of the Middle East, both for resources, but also out of these kind of, messianic initiatives that span multiple groups and are really frightening because they're not based on logic, and they're not even based on the logic of time. They're based on the logic of the end times. They're kind of assuming there may not be a future, and that's just fine because the Messiah may come. And, I wrote it in my book. They knew, and I'll say it again, do not base foreign policy around the rapture or the Messiah or whatever, your religion says. Like, these people's lives are in your hands. Like, it's one of those comments when I made, I think people thought I was being flip or funny, but there are many, many people in our government and in Israel's government, who believe in this fervently and will actually, make and guide wars and policy to reflect those ambitions.
There may be more in the U.S. government than in the highest levels of the Israeli government. I see the Israeli government in a way, you know this better than I do, really, but as wanting to expand, wanting a bigger footprint in all these ways. But I don't know if it's the Christian nationalism that I see, the Christo-fascist thing that is Hegseth, for example, and I'd say Trump. He you know him better than I do. I mean, he doesn't seem to have any religious underpinnings whatsoever. Yeah,
Trump doesn't care. Although Trump has been told many times by many different people that he is the Messiah. He's been told he is the Christian Messiah. He was told by Lev Parnas that he was the Jewish Messiah, and he was given gifts by rabbis from Ukraine and Israel. So there's fundamentalism and fanaticism from both Jewish people in Israel in particular, the heirs to the Kahanists. And that's what my most recent article is about, is this extremist party that was once banned in Israel because it was a terrorist organization. They got into the Knesset by forming a bond with Netanyahu and working their way in 2021. And then Biden took them off of the terrorist watch list where they had been since 1994. Baruch Goldstein, who massacred 29 Palestinians in Hebron, he was a Kahanist. And so this group had been banned. They now make up a significant and influential part of the Israeli government. And of course, on our end, we have, Hegseth, we had Pompeo before him. We've had a number of, Christian evangelical, Catholic fanatics who, again, base policy around the end times. Saw it in the Bush administration, Reagan, all kinds of, it's a long-running trend that thankfully reasonable people in the past, both in Israel and in the United States, have managed to contain. Now, unfortunately, is a dominant trend, and it hooks up with a lot of other things, Zionist expansionism, techno-fascist, desire to depopulate the earth and replace us with AI. I mean, there's so many bad ideologies floating around, and they've all kind of converged in this war on Iran.
Yeah, so true. I mean, it's the convergence of these things that makes it even scarier. We're going to link to Sarah's Substack under this video, also all her books. We always link to all of this stuff, but just to remind you. And there it is, the No World Order, and a list of her books. And The Last American Road Trip, her latest, is dreamy. and kind of with some moments of real sobriety as you take these series of road trips that she took with her family. All right, Sarah, that's it. You're so cool to come hang out with us every week. I appreciate it. And we'll hang on tight till the next time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Yeah, we're a live show. I know we do it every day, Monday through Friday. Appreciate everybody who's a regular, and you can subscribe to the show. You yourself can be a regular for free, which is the best part of it. Yeah, and hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there is a new video. Hello, everyone. I am so confused. Quickly, some comments before we talk to Skye, who is a superstar in the world of doing the right thing in the law. Skye Perryman.
And
we'll
now,
get to her.
your comments.
Chaplain Fred says for $5 with a super chat. Hello, everyone. I'm so confused. If Democrats and Republicans know that Trump is wrong about everything, why isn't anyone doing anything about it? Yeah. Well, isn't that the question for the ages? I don't think everyone is in lockstep on this. MAGA Mara. I mean, I cross-pollinate in these worlds that are not all this echo chamber. And let me tell you, the other echo chambers are strong. They are. Richard Delamater with a $2 super chat. MAGA moms getting frightened should be your kids. Yeah, and so you're talking about the draft, of course. And I promise one draftee will not be Barron Trump. I think he'll be, he'll be protected from any kind of draft. Nobody was held politically or legally accountable, says depressed Canadian, for the crimes committed in the Bush years. How can we be sure the Dems, if they get back into power, will just turn the page as they did before? Yeah, I don't think you can be sure. I think the turning the page instinct is one that Merrick Garland had, it certainly. Right. Slow walked everything when it came to Trump. But it's funny. I'll talk to Skye Perryman about it. I mean, she's, really fighting sort of the legal fights and within the courtrooms and within the court structure. Can you get any justice for someone and some group so powerful? I mean, let's be honest. They can pre-pardon a lot of these people. So a lot of the corruption and a lot of the madness and illegality that's informed this administration can be, it can be in the rear view without any repercussions. Might just be a way to put it. So thanks for the super sticker. Mark Francis for the $5 super sticker. Appreciate that. And
big shout out.
I want to get to Skye in just a minute, but I first want to mention Zellman's. I was in a couple of situations this weekend. Zellman's our latest sponsor partner, and it fights bad breath, but here's how it works. It's not just like a breath mint. It's these little pills, little capsules, excuse me. And on the outside of the capsule, that's a good picture of it. You get this powerful mint blast. So your breath in your mouth is fresh, but the real magic of this is after your breath gets fresh in your mouth, because after you have this thing, you switch it around. I take 3 at a time. You swallow, what is left is a tiny capsule, and in that capsule is parsley seed oil. And that parsley seed oil neutralizes the things that cause odors in your stomach and that come back up as bad breath. It's a remarkable technology. And by the way, they paid for this expensive scientific study, so they know that it really does work. And we road tested it, and it really does work. We take it at night to prevent morning breath, and it's really great. I was all over it this weekend because I was in a couple of situations where there are a lot of, congregate settings. Yeah,
I had a situation this weekend. There was a high school band fundraiser, and I was very popular because I was at the drink ticket table. A lot of people drinking and boozing it up. But because of the loud music, they have to lean in right? And ask
Oh,
for how many
sure.
tickets they want. And I knew this because I worked at this particular table last year and the year before. So I took my Zellmans. I had no problem. Lean on in. I will sell you your drink tickets. You're good.
That's wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
clinically tested, it really does work. Check it out yourself. Zellmans, Zelmins, for everybody who's just listening on iHeart Radio or whatever. Zelmins, Zellmans.com. Use our discount code MARKT. You'll get 15% off. Mark T at checkout, 15% off. Zellmans.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm excited. The CEO, president of Democracy Forward, nonpartisan national legal organization promoting democracy and progress through litigation. Sometimes you got to take them to court. In fact, that's just all too common a need. So a remarkable fight is going on in the courts against a regime that is taking more and more leverage in more and more ways. How about it for Skye Perryman, everybody? Hello,
Hi.
Skye.
Hi. So last time, remember, you got new glasses, and I had
Oh
mine.
my God, we've got dueling credibility glasses. This is brilliant.
I'm going to take mine off, but I didn't forget you. So
I could take mine off, but instantly I lose credibility. I just got my hair colored and cut for this interview, and it matches my glasses too, so I want to keep them on. All right, with the preliminaries out of the way, welcome. You've been busy. Skye Perryman, you work in the courts, with the legal system, and the legal system is embattled by this administration. In fact, law firms specifically have been taken on by this administration, and we're right away. I mean, it happened in the first 90 days of the administration, and some of them tapped out. So what happened last week is that the administration seemed to be dropping all of that stuff that they were doing and taking on those law firms. And so the kind of litigation you've been involved in, I guess you maybe were thinking, but for a pretty short time, because they reversed themselves, that this wouldn't need to go forward, the pushback on the administration legally. Now they're saying, nope, we've changed our mind again. We are going to go after these law firms. Bring us up to speed on this.
yeah, I mean, this is where you really see the administration grasping for straws. They're both operating in an incredibly unlawful way and in an incredibly incompetent way. But what we saw last week was after every single law firm that challenged the executive orders by the president that were targeting lawyers, every single law firm that took the administration to court won. And they won before different judges. Some of them are reported by Republicans, some of them are reported by Democrats. So this is not a controversial issue when judges look at it. This is a violation of the First Amendment. It also violates, by the way, other amendments to the Constitution, like the Fifth and Sixth Amendment, that guarantee people access to counsel. So it's totally unconstitutional. The administration started to signal that it was going to do what it has done in a lot of the cases that we litigate, which is to pretend like they're going to appeal, even file a notice of appeal, but then when it gets time to put the briefs on file, to abandon the appeal and just to walk away, because they don't actually like to extend their losses. So that's what it looked like they were doing. And then we understand the president woke up and saw the headlines and didn't like that it looked like what it was, which is that the law firms had won the day. They're going to continue to win. And so they pulled back their initial filing, saying that they were going to dismiss the cases. So it really shows you incompetence, and it shows you how lawless the administration is. The law firms are going to prevail on appeal. So it seems like the administration just wants to continue to prolong their loss here.
Well, they want to prolong it because, as you say, the Mad King was unhappy with the press.
Right. And, we get a lot of press on a lot of our times where we've gone in. We went in on their big, their Dear Colleague letter that would have defunded all of higher education, K through 12 education, if institutions didn't commit to the president's view of the civil rights laws and didn't commit to undermining diversity, equity, inclusion, what you can teach in the classroom. We won that before a judge that the president himself appointed, a Trump appointed judge, and they walked away from that appeal. There were headlines on that, but I think the law firm was just really close to home because it seemed like it was something that he had like a real personal interest in. So of course now Department of Justice is back in court. They filed an incredibly, it's pretty unbelievable brief on Friday that just contains a number of statements that are totally wrong on the law, suggesting that the president can in fact threaten people and prevent lawyers from representing clients, which is just not what the law is.
There's just a a chaos, maybe it would be the word, about the Justice Department that has to make your job a little bit more difficult. On one level, I guess it goes to what you're saying, which is there's an incompetence, and maybe that just rules the day. I mean, just nothing is really done in any way that reflects thought, efficiency, or competence. But on another level, it's like they're just coming at you from all these sort of chaotic directions.
Yeah, I mean, this is their strategy, is to try to exhaust people, to try to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what will stick. We've been able to make a lot of it not stick, and I think that's really frustrated the president, which is of course why he's targeting lawyers and law firms. Interestingly, the brief that Department of Justice filed, I read it, and at the back of it, I think you only see 2 officials signing the brief, 2 people on the signature line. There, it looks like, the number 3, the person that's the number 3 at the Department of Justice, a political appointee. You don't see any career attorneys on that brief, and that's sort of just an interesting observation.
Well, on that, is there an exposure that those who sign something like that have, or in other legal matters that they're proffering on behalf of the administration? Is there legal exposure? Like, I'm talking about the risk of being disbarred or something along those lines.
Well, I mean, look, there's a number of filings that the Department of Justice has made with lawyers signing those filings where it has turned out that what was stated in them was incorrect. And that is a major violation of professional ethics, our professional ethics as lawyers, as well as in some instances, the law, depending on what these statements were, what the intent behind them are. So we do believe, and you see this with the push and pull between the career lawyers and the political lawyers, even some political lawyers, you see they're to some degree afraid, I think, of their professional ethics, of having to be held accountable, maybe being disbarred, not being able to work again. So you see that push and pull happening, which is, by the way, why even with the president wanting to attack the courts and judges, we're still getting a lot of information from the cases that we're filing, because at the end of the day, if a lawyer's got to put something on file, it has to be truthful. Now, unfortunately, the administration has normalized, and the Department of Justice has normalized really many filings that don't have accurate information in them. And this is why you see so many people saying that presumption of regularity that the courts used to afford the government. Oh, if the government's representing it, it's going to get a little bit of deference there. It just doesn't exist anymore in these courts because of how many misstatements have been made.
Yeah, it is. I think I was trying to remember who it was. Maybe it was David K. Johnston or someone with some knowledge of the law was speaking about the fact that what you're talking about, which is sort of just throwing in a bunch of information that is clearly not true, that it can have repercussions, like the Eastman type repercussions.
It will, and Donald Trump can't pardon people back into their bar license, and so
right.
So that's a piece for the lawyers that are involved in this. And then you have I haven't reviewed in complete detail all the factual representations. This was a appellate brief that the government filed in the law firm cases. That's where you just have, like, do you really want your name to be on a brief? It's essentially suggesting that your entire profession, and by the way, the constitutional guarantees that are provided for people in this country to be able to have lawyers. I mean, John Adams represented British soldiers. I mean, this goes way, way back. Is this really what you want to be known for in your career, that you're in court trying to say that a president that's seeking to act like a king can undermine the entire judicial system and legal profession? And so I think that's why it was a pretty slim when you get to the back of the brief as to who signed it.
When you, in the last couple of minutes, when you look at the sort of the playing field, you really have been involved in so many cases. I wonder if you can give us a sense of what's happened between your last visit and now. What are some of the victories that you feel, or some of the ongoing struggles you feel you're getting the upper hand with?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we've been winning quite a lot. I don't just say that. There's, if you have a setback, that means you're pushing hard for your client, but we've been winning a lot. And so one I mentioned, which is the education system forcing the government to just back off. I mean, this was a big centerpiece of the MAGA movement's piece against diversity, equity, inclusion, against the ability to teach real history. All those cases the government's had to walk away from.
I think I think you're right. And I think that the sort of the soul of America that they're kind of trying to rewrite. Speak to a couple of those specifics. I mean, because that was again, so much an agenda item.
Yes, and I'll get to the other ones, but I mean, this was a big case. I mean, this was a case. It was the Dear Colleague letter. This was the president's Valentine. It came out on February 14th last year to the American public that basically wanted to scare institutions of higher education and K through 12 institutions into having to pull back how they were teaching classes if the president disagreed with it or if it didn't comport with his views of the civil rights laws. We won flat out before a Trump appointed judge. There were 2 other cases that also had some early success. The government walked away from the appeal in those. That's a final order. I mean, not going to the Supreme Court. And there you have it. In Minnesota, we have won court orders that are protecting people's right to counsel. I mean, this administration is detaining people, putting them in detention, not allowing them to access a lawyer. This is a theme we're having with the law firms, but we've won that in a very clear order. We're back in court having to hold the government accountable to its compliance there. We won on Friday a tremendous court order in Oregon where ICE has been using tear gas against protesters, but knowingly using it also, I mean, that's already a problem. And then they're knowingly using it around housing developments, including low-income housing developments, and kids are being poisoned. They wouldn't even discontinue what they were doing until we got the court order, but now we have a court order. That's a big one because that's going to potentially lead to some personal liability or other types of liability, monetary liability against the government for the families that have been hurt. So we're kind of pursuing various tracks on that case. And then earlier today, we won a large court order out of federal court in D.C. Blocking a major part of the president's, what he calls his immigration enforcement agenda. We know it's a power grab agenda where the administration was trying to deprive non-citizens of their ability to use the appellate system to appeal various immigration determinations, essentially depriving them of judicial review. We blocked that, which will really help a lot of people, including those seeking asylum or in the asylum process. So this is like, today's a Monday. I usually say this is a Tuesday. This is every day. We have an incredible team here of lawyers and non-lawyers that work every day, most of the time, sometimes late at night, to get these cases on file. But what we want people to understand is that as people are pushing back, we really are winning in a lot of these cases. That's not to minimize the suffering that people are going through. It is to say that this president is not beyond pushback, and a combination of the courts and people mobilizing as they have has really started to slop and slow this administration's agenda. And we're going to continue to do that.
I mean, people talk about the courts and why can't more be done, and the courts are the last bulwark against everything going on. And the reality is that, there is stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's the courts and it's the people, right? It's the courts and it's the people. And I think that's what you see in Minneapolis. I mean, the president did not prevail in many. There were some cases where they prevailed. They didn't prevail in much of that litigation. And then you also have the people pushing back. They had to walk it back. Supreme Court's made them walk back the National Guard. I think that's what you see in a range of things.
And you're down there in Texas, as I recall, right, Skye?
So I'm from Texas. Right now I'm sitting in my office in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay. All right. We talked about Texas
I'll be in Texas tomorrow. I'll be at the LBJ Presidential Library tomorrow. So
yeah. Wow. That's very cool. Well,
talking about voting rights, which we should also come talk about at some point here.
Please. The vote is something that is being aggressively impinged upon by the plans of Project 2025 and this administration. I'd love to talk about it for your next visit. We'll schedule it right away. We'll get it on the calendar. I'd love to talk about that. Lawyer boots on the ground. Thank you, says Mobius. Yeah, right on.
I actually have boots on physically today. So there you go. Real boots on the ground.
We have a link to your website at Democracy Forward under this video. We go to court for people and democracy. There it is, Democracy Forward. Check them out, democracyforward.org. It is it's a great pleasure to talk to you always, Skye.
Great.
And, I look forward to the next time.
Yep.
See you soon. Skye Perryman, everybody. Right on, baby. Keep those glasses going.
I will. Okay. Bye.
I'm loving it. Love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, my God. We've done a lot today already. I know. How do we do it? I'll tell you how I do it. I'm loaded up on my Coachella Valley coffee. And by the way, they are big presence. Rocking the Clarity blend today.
Good.
And Kim rocking her Moroccan tea. Rocking the Moroccan. All organic and ethically sourced from women-owned farms. If that were just the case, I would tell you that story, but I wouldn't say what I'm about to say. It is the best coffee on earth. Yes. It's amazing. I mean, the curation that they do with this coffee from all around the world is one that you'll find immediately discernible, might be the word I'd use, the minute you, and I don't think discernible has ever been used in mentioning coffee before, but
I would say that's a ding word.
It is dingable. I think you're
ding
right.
you. Yeah.
But what you'll notice right away, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is just how great it is. And that's because they curate this coffee from everywhere. And again, from women-owned farms. And we'll get Cliff back to talk about Coachella Valley Coffee and their process. But it's a boutique roastery. It's hand-roasted. They're tasting profiles under all of the beans. The teas are magic, and the spices as well. Anything you want, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. There's Cliff, and there's me on the left.
Hey, look at that.
Wow. Use our discount code MARKT, and you'll get 10% off. MARKT, you get 10% off CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Anything on the website, their merch, whatever you want. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and you won't be disappointed. You will love their coffee.
Put that coffee down.
I promise whatever you order, you will groove on. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't know if I have to.
And now, your comments.
Are there any other comments that I need to get to? Now would be the time to speak or forever hold your peace.
We didn't mention this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. This is Glenn.
So this is Glenn B.
Yeah.
I think, he finally
We
worked out
already-
how to donate from Australia. Love it. Brisbane, Queensland.
We
The
have
Oslo
not
attack. I'm
yeah,
sorry, go
talked
ahead.
about the Oslo attack yet, but this is on the U.S. Embassy, where there was, I think, some kind of explosive that was hurled at the U.S. Embassy in Norway, in Oslo. So that's interesting.
I mean, this kind of thing that you're going to see, you're seeing in Oslo, you're going to see elsewhere. I just think you'll see it because you have a sense of the aggrieved party being the free world, and somehow this is the way it's being cast. Please, and America being the aggressor along with the Israelis. And I just think this sort of punch back at America you're going to see more of. So this is why people are frightened of traveling. It's why people are now more vigilant even in America. I mean, what might crop up here? I talked to Sarah Kendzior about it. The idea somehow that you now have a righteous battle that these terrorists are fighting on behalf of the Iranians, the Middle East, and the world against this imperialist army that is the Americans and the Israelis. That's the way the story goes, and that can animate a lot of people. As Trump says, it happens, says Tammy. I guess this is the suspect that Kim's got up there.
Yeah, no, I did. BBC just released this.
Yeah. So, I mean, they say, investigators, that it probably is the deliberate attack. It was an attack that caused minor damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
They haven't identified any suspects in all of this. But I'm just trying to say that this kind of terrorism adjacent to this kind of conflict is not unusual. And it's not, the fact that it's not unusual doesn't make it in any way acceptable or any less scary. But I'm just saying it is of a kind, The draft isn't for the Iran war. It is for all the wars in the pipeline. Wow, that's a really, really scary comment. Thank you, Anon. The country that my grandfather savagely fought to defend is not the same country that exists today, says Revelation. We are not sending our sons out to die to make, sorry, what is that?
Some type of worshipers wealthy. I don't know
see.
what
Yeah. I don't know what the I don't know what that. It's the it's a lord or master.
Mm.
Yeah, the primary rival to Yahweh is Baal. Is that it?
Who knew?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. I didn't know.
What?
Okay, well, I'm just telling you what I see here. Okay. The very reason people came here to America is now the reason they want to leave, says JP. Well, I mean, the reason they came to America was for freedom of speech, a lot of other stuff, generally, I think. I think I get what you're saying. The reason they want to leave is because of the loss of a lot of those things, I think, and that America's become, I mean, I think Sarah Kendzior would tell you that, America sort of always has been what it is now, but we're just sort of taking the mask off. But it's a really ugly thing that's happening right now in America, I'd say. I mean, it's an ugliness that's being played out across a lot of different arenas. And still, it's the country I grew up in. I love America. I love Americans, and I love the openness of this culture. I love the warmth of this culture in general. I mean, there's a lot special in America, and of course, the place itself, the geography of America is magnificent. But I think the government right now has some serious problems. There are others in the government who share my view, and some of them are Republicans. Here's Tom Tillis on Stephen Miller. Cut 4, please, Tony. Stephen Miller is identified by Tom Tillis as a problem in this administration.
It gives me pause that you had people like Stephen Miller calling the shots that actually I believe that maybe Kristi Noem acted on. It was Stephen Miller that was talking about a terrorist brandishing a gun. It was Stephen Miller who said it was the position of the United States that we should go after Greenland. It's Stephen Miller that's been repeatedly responsible for embarrassments for the President of the United States by acting too quickly, speaking first and thinking later. I think if I don't think Mark Wayne goes to the podium and repeats something that Stephen Miller says. I think Stephen Miller's demonstrated he too is out of his depth, and I think Mark Wayne will learn from that.
Do you think Stephen Miller should go?
Oh, of course I do. I think Stephen Miller is one of the. Not only does Stephen really want to just paint a picture, he's not worried about substance, he's more worried about form, but I also think that he has an outsized influence over the operations of the cabinet. And I believe we've got qualified cabinet members there that sometimes are doing less than what they want to because of his direction and his outsized influence. He's a big problem in this administration. He has been from the beginning.
Yeah, so that is the word on Stephen Miller. That's from Tom Tillis. So that's not nothing. And I think a lot of what he says is true. The Mark Wayne Mullen part, I might have a little bit of an issue. I think Mark Wayne Mullen may not go to the podium and regurgitate something that was said by Stephen Miller, like the domestic terrorist thing. But Mark Wayne Mullen very much, well, of course, he's very loyal to Trump. That is to be expected. But he is very much about an aggressive posture toward immigration. And if you need a reminder as to who he is, let me play you cut 9. This is Mark Wayne Mullen spoiling for a fight with a union leader who he gets into a back and forth with. Go ahead.
Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution every problem?
No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay. Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Mr.
Hold it.
I just think that this is, it's lunacy. It's lunacy, but it reflects increasingly the kind of muscularity, literally, that this administration has. And, those who are floating to the top are these, I'm a bigger badass than you are type thing. Even Kristi Noem, who was shown the door, right? She had to show her badassery by talking about how and writing about how she'd killed her dog. How, the killing of things is now a brag. It's or I will beat you up or F you up. It's wild. Play me cut 6, if you would, Tony. This is from the White House, and I'm trying to remember what it's related to. Oh, this is the war cut. This is very much on brand. So this is the White House released this. It's a cut of different war. Look at Maverick from Top Gun, Mel Gibson in Braveheart, Russell Crowe in Gladiator. I mean, this is the Iron Man cut is in there. There's a bunch of other drone footage in there of blowing stuff up. Walter White from Breaking Bad. I mean, these are, and there's the Transformer stuff. I don't know what this is supposed to communicate. I mean, it is the fetishization of war. That is from the White House. It is a celebration of stuff that you shouldn't celebrate. I mean, the madness of war, the horror of war, these are realities. And yet the verbiage of this administration, and then something like that, the messaging of the administration, I just don't think it reflects how dark war is and the real effects of war. Even if you listen to Hegseth, play cut 5, he's all about, oh, they're not going to be taking any information. We're going to be getting the information. Oh, they're not the bad guy. We're not the bad guys. They're the bad guys, or some version of that. Play cut 5 again. This is him with Scott. Is it Major Garrett? This is the tough talk I'm speaking of, though, when he talks about, I mean, this is the myth of American exceptionalism. I grew up with it. You grew up with it. I mean, with the sense that we have the best of everything here, and we do in a lot of places, even in the American military. But the idea somehow Americans can rest assured, we've got things controlled. We're going to mitigate. We're going to lethality and mitigate lethality and mitigate. It's jargon. It feels paper thin, and then you realize that American military made a horrible error in the first day of the war when they took out an elementary school and killed 175 schoolgirls with a Tomahawk missile. And what do we do as America? We lie about it. We say it was the Iranians. We say we're investigating it still. You have that cut, Tony? Is it cut 14? There have been several comments on it, but none of them include it was one of ours that got away. Here is President Trump.
The deaths are part of war, yeah.
It's part of war. It's a sad part of war. It's the bad part of war.
Mr. President, did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done. We think it was done by Iran.
Can you give us an idea?
Because they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions.
Well, as it turns out, we know now. I mean, based on all reporting, it's been corroborated. There's even video that elementary school was taken out by an American Tomahawk. Look, I'm just suggesting that the profound mistake should be acknowledged on some level. In any case, this is the situation we find ourselves in. And what's celebrated, I think, by the American administration now is, again, a kind of peacocking at all times. Play me cut 10. This happened over the weekend as I think it's Friday, late Friday after we got off the air, addressing a group of Latin American countries. And so Rubio is speaking in Spanish, and he finishes up a couple of remarks in Spanish, and then Hegseth comes on. Here's Marco Rubio. And listen to what Hegseth says. I speak American.
Países, a los Estados Unidos, y gracias como siempre por la cooperación. Seguiremos trabajando en conjunto y vamos a hacer cosas muy buenas, muy importantes para esta región que van a hacer que las generaciones futuras nos van a agradecer el labor que estamos haciendo en el momento de hoy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is he better in Spanish or in English? I think he's better in Spanish. I mean, it's great. Pete, please.
Mr. President, I only speak American.
I think he means that in a glib way. They all speak the kind of glib, loose way that they speak. I don't want to read too much into it, but I just think, it just speaks to the framing, okay? Again, I don't want to take a cheap shot. There are too many legitimate shots you can take, but again, it just speaks to the flipness with which everything is handled. But again, he might have just, all right. Trump says he is thinking of taking over the Strait of Hormuz. This is breaking news. President Donald Trump saying in an interview with CBS News on Monday that his administration is thinking, in quotes, of taking over the Strait of Hormuz. The president reportedly told CBS News that the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy choke points, carrying roughly a fifth of global oil shipments, is open, but that the White House is still thinking about taking it over. Oil prices have sharply spiked to $100 a barrel. The oil price situation is reflective of the true way in which, and there's the oil, the crude oil futures and their prices, mid-80s right now, the way in which the ripple effects extend worldwide. We'll have more on that tomorrow with David K. Johnston. Also tomorrow, the way AI is taking over so much of our lives and the war. In fact, it's suggested that elementary school that I was talking about may have been bombed because of the involvement in all of this with AI. So we'll talk about that. Wait, I thought MAGA got upset when someone speaks or sings in Spanish. Yeah, it's thank you, Randy. I think that is all. I talk good American, says, Blue Spark. Well, we got you the latest from the administration on the Strait of Hormuz. Good conversation with Skye Perryman. Good conversation with Sarah Kendzior, and another with Gary Dietrich. So we got some, some solid stuff in today. Tomorrow, as I say, David K. Johnston, and then we talk AI as well with one of the world's leading AI experts. We'll talk about, again, the role of AI even in this combat theater in Iran. So thanks everybody who joined us, for all the ways you support us. You're going to see the names of people on the end of this show, and those people all make every show happen through Patreon and PayPal. There are links to both of them under this video. Kim, thank you. Tony, thank you. And until tomorrow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good show.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.